The morning alarm buzzed through the crystal corridors of the Zephyrian High Command Station. Commander Zeltar stretched his forearms and blinked his large, dark eyes. Another day of keeping peace in the galaxy. Another day of making sure the hundreds of alien species didn't kill each other over trade routes and territory disputes. Zeltar had been doing this job for 60 years. His blue-green skin showed the stress marks that came with age and responsibility. As the head of the Galactic Enforcement Division, he had seen wars start over the smallest things. A misunderstood greeting between species, a cargo ship taking the wrong hyperspace lane, even arguments about what color to paint a space station. But in all his years of service, there was one rule that every species in the galaxy knew. One rule that kept the peace better than any treaty or military threat. One simple rule that even the most aggressive alien warlords respected. Don't mess with Earth's fleet. Zeltar walked to his office window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving through space, carrying goods and people between worlds. The humans had only been part of galactic society for 50 years, but they had earned their reputation quickly. It started with the Korvaxi incident. The Korvaxi Empire had been one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds with their massive war fleets. Their ships were huge, armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities. When they first met humans, the Korvaxi thought they had found easy prey. The humans had just learned how to travel between stars. Their ships looked primitive compared to Korvaxi technology. They used chemical rockets and simple metal hulls. The Korvaxi admiral had laughed when he saw the human fleet approaching. He expected an easy victory. What happened next changed everything. The human fleet, outnumbered 1,000 to 1, somehow destroyed the entire Korvaxi armada. Not just defeated them, completely destroyed them. Every ship, every weapon, every trace of the mighty Korvaxi fleet turned into floating debris in space. The galaxy never learned exactly how the humans did it. The few Korvaxi survivors spoke of impossible things. Human ships moving faster than they should. Weapons that ignored shields and armor. Tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. After that day, every species in the galaxy understood. Humans were different. They looked weak, but they were not. They preferred peace, but they could make war like no one else. Zeltar's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. His assistant, Veline, entered the office. Veline was an Altarian with gray skin and multiple eyes that could see in different directions at once. Right now, all of those eyes looked worried. "Commander," Veline said, his voice shaking slightly. "We have a problem. A big problem." Zeltar turned from the window. In 60 years of service, he had learned to read alien body language. Veline was terrified. "What happened?" Zeltar asked. Veline activated the holographic display in the center of the office. Three-dimensional images appeared in the air, showing star maps and ship positions. 3 human cargo vessels were intercepted yesterday in the Kepler sector. The Kral hegemony took them. Zeltar felt his blood turn cold. The Kral were a relatively new power in the galaxy. They had been expanding their territory for the past 10 years, conquering smaller civilizations and building a large military. They were aggressive, confident, and apparently stupid. "Tell me exactly what happened," Zeltar said. Veline manipulated the display showing the location where the incident occurred. The human ships were carrying medical supplies to the Outer Rim colonies. Standard commercial route, properly licensed, no military escort. The Kral demanded tribute, payment for passage through what they claim is their space. The humans refused, Zeltar said. It wasn't a question. Humans never paid tribute to anyone. Yes. The Kral response was to disable the human ships and take them to their main base at Kepler's Rest. They're holding the ships and crews prisoner. Zeltar stared at the display. Kepler's Rest was a massive asteroid fortress surrounded by hundreds of Kral warships. It was the heart of their military. Power designed to be unconquerable. "How many crew members?" he asked. 47 humans total. The Kral sent a message to Earth demanding payment for their release. They want rare metals, technology, and formal recognition of Kral territorial claims. Zeltar closed his eyes. What did Earth say? Nothing official. But our monitoring. Stations picked up massive fleet movements throughout human space. Every ship commander, they're mobilizing everything. The office fell silent. Zeltar had seen this before, 50 years ago. The same pattern, the same terrible certainty about what would come next. "Sir," Velen said quietly, "surely the humans will negotiate. The Kral have 800 ships at Kepler's Rest. They have new shield technology from the Vorthans. Even Earth fleet wouldn't attack such a strong position." Zeltar opened his eyes and looked at his assistant. Velen was young, maybe only 20 years old. He hadn't been alive during the Korvaxi incident. He didn't understand what humans were really like. "Velen," Zeltar said slowly, "let me tell you about humans. When other species take prisoners, they negotiate. They try diplomacy. They look for ways to avoid fighting. Humans are different." He walked to another window that showed deep space. "Humans don't negotiate when their people are taken. They don't send angry messages or make threats. They don't try to find peaceful solutions." He paused. "They just come. But surely they'll try to save lives, avoid unnecessary destruction. The only lives humans care about in a situation like this are human lives. Everyone else becomes a target." Zeltar turned back to Velen. "I was there, 50 years ago. I watched it happen. The Korvaxi thought they were fighting a military campaign. The humans treated it like pest control." Velen's multiple eyes blinked, in confusion. "I don't understand." "When humans go to war, they don't fight to win territory or gain advantage. They fight to remove threats. Completely. Permanently. The Korvaxi Empire had existed for 2,000 years before they met humans. After the battle, there was no Korvaxi Empire. There were no Korvaxi fleets. There were barely any Korvaxi left. Alive! The holographic display continued to show ship movements throughout human space. Green dots representing human vessels were converging from every direction, all heading toward Kral territory. "Contact the Kral immediately," Zeltar ordered. "Tell them to release the human crews and ships immediately. No conditions, no demands. Just let them go." "Sir, the Kral won't listen to us. They consider the Zephyrians weak. They've ignored our diplomatic messages for months." "Then send a military fleet. Make them listen." Velen looked shocked. "Sir, that would mean war with the Kral hegemony. Our forces aren't prepared for that kind of conflict." Zeltar laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Velen, in 72 hours there won't be a Kral hegemony to fight. The humans are coming." The display updated with new information. More. Human ships were joining the fleet. The number was growing every hour. "Send an emergency message to all Zephyrian ships in the Kepler sector," Zeltar said. "Tell them to withdraw immediately. Minimum safe distance of 50 light years." 50 light years? "Sir, that's excessive. The fighting will be limited to the immediate area around Kepler's Rest." "No, it won't." Zeltar's skin changed color, showing stress patterns that Velen had never seen before. When humans fight, they don't just attack the enemy. They attack everything that supports the enemy. Every supply base, every shipyard, every planet that provided resources. They call it strategic warfare, but it looks like extinction from the outside. A new message appeared on the display. The human fleet had reached 500 ships and was still growing. The course was set directly for Kral's space. "What about the other species?" Velen asked. "The Kral have allies, defense treaties. The smart ones will break those treaties in the next few hours. The stupid ones will learn why everyone else broke their treaties." Zeltar walked to his desk and began typing orders. "Send messages to all member species. Emergency advisory. Any civilization with connections to the Kral hegemony should sever those connections immediately." "Sir." That will cause panic throughout the galaxy. Good. Panic might save some lives. Zeltar finished his message and sent it to the Galactic Council. Velen, how old are you? 22 standard years, sir. You're about to see something that happens maybe once in a civilization's lifetime. You're about to see what humans are really capable of when they're angry. The holographic display updated again. The human fleet now numbered over 1,000 ships. Intelligence reports suggested they were carrying weapons that had never been seen before. New technology, new ways to kill. I still don't understand, Velen said. Why are the humans so different? Why are they so much more dangerous than other species? Zeltar thought about the question. He had asked it himself many times over the years. Most species in the galaxy evolved as prey animals at some point in their development. We learned to run, to hide, to avoid conflict. Even the aggressive species learned to fight just enough to survive. He pointed at the display showing human fleet positions. Humans evolved as predators, but not just any predators. They were persistence hunters. They would chase their prey for days, weeks, if necessary. They never gave up. They never stopped. They would follow their target until it collapsed from exhaustion. That was millions of years ago, Velen protested. They're civilized now. Yes, they're civilized. They build beautiful cities and create amazing art. They're kind to their friends and generous to strangers. But when someone threatens them, that old predator instinct wakes up. And when it does, they don't stop hunting until the threat is gone. A priority message flashed on the display. The Kral had sent another demand to Earth, increasing their ransom demands. They wanted twice as much payment for the human crews. Zeltar shook his head. Idiots. They have no idea what they've done. Maybe the humans will pay, Velen suggested hopefully, to avoid bloodshed. Humans don't pay ransom. Ever. It's against their fundamental beliefs. They consider it encouraging more hostage-taking. Zeltar pulled up files from the Korvaxi incident. 50 years ago, the Korvaxi took a human research station hostage, demanded technology and territorial concessions. The humans' response was to destroy every Korvaxi military installation in the galaxy. Every installation, everyone. They found bases that the Korvaxi themselves had forgotten about. Hidden weapons depots, secret shipyards. The humans hunted down every military asset the Korvaxi had built over 2,000 years of expansion. It took them 6 months of constant fighting, but they found everything. The display showed new information. The human fleet was now approaching 2,000 ships. They were moving in perfect formation, maintaining communication silence. Sir, Velen said quietly, what should we do? Our job. We keep the peace everywhere else while the humans handle this problem, and we document what happens, so future generations understand why we have the rule. The rule? Don't tamper with Earth's fleet. Don't take their people. Don't threaten their ships. Don't mistake their preference for peace as weakness. Zeltar turned away from the display. The Kral knew the rule. Everyone knows the rule. They chose to break it anyway. Maybe they thought they were strong enough to fight humans. Strength has nothing to do with it. The Korvaxi were strong. They had better technology, more ships, superior weapons. It didn't matter. When humans go to war, they don't rely on being stronger than their enemies. They rely on being more determined. A soft alarm chimed. The human fleet had reached the edge of Kral space. In a few hours, the fighting would begin. Velen, Zeltar said, "You're about to witness the most important lesson in galactic politics." The Kral thought they could take human prisoners and negotiate from a position of strength. They're about to learn that when you take humans prisoner, you don't get negotiations, you get consequences. The display showed the final tally. 2,300 human ships, all converging on a single point in space. The largest military fleet assembled in galactic history, all because 47 humans had been taken prisoner. Is this really necessary? Velen asked. All this destruction over 47 people? Zeltar looked at his young assistant with something like pity. That's exactly the question the humans want everyone to ask. Is it worth it? Is fighting the humans worth the cost? For 47 prisoners? For a few cargo ships? For anything? And the answer? The answer is always no. It's never worth it. That's why we have the rule. Zeltar turned off the display. Come on. We have work to do. The galaxy is about to have some new vacant territory that will need governing. As they left the office, Velen asked one final question. How long do you think the fighting will last? Zeltar paused at the door. Fighting? There won't be any fighting. The humans aren't coming to fight. They're coming to collect their people and remove a problem. The Krall will realize that soon. Enough. And then they'll be gone. The door closed behind them, leaving the office empty except for the soft hum of computers and the distant light of stars. Somewhere in that darkness, two civilizations were about to meet. One that believed in negotiation and compromise. One that believed in final solutions. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see which philosophy would survive the encounter. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Earth space vessel Indomitable, watching the holographic display update with ship positions from across human space. Each green dot represented a warship responding to the emergency call. Each dot represented crews who had dropped everything to answer when their people needed help. The display now showed over 1,500 ships converging on a single destination. The largest military fleet in human history, all because 47 civilians had been taken prisoner by aliens who thought they could negotiate from a position of strength. Admiral, called Lieutenant Liu from the communications station. We have updates from all sectors. Every available ship is responding. Even the training vessels from the Academy want to join the fleet. Chen nodded but didn't take her eyes off the display. She had been expecting this response. When humans were threatened, other humans came running. It didn't matter if they were military or civilian, friend or stranger. The response was always the same. What's our total count now? She asked. 2,100 and growing, reported Commander Hayes from the tactical station. The shipyards are working overtime to get the new vessels ready. Even ships that were scheduled for maintenance are being rushed back into service. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Krall probably thought they were dealing with a standard military response. They had no idea they had just awakened something much more dangerous than any army. Admiral, Liu said, we're receiving messages from the Zephyrian High Command. They want to discuss the situation. They're concerned about our fleet movements. Tell them we appreciate their concern, Chen replied, but this is an internal matter. Hayes looked up from his station. Internal, ma'am? The Krall hegemony spans 12 star systems. They have defense agreements with half a dozen other species. How is this internal? Chen finally turned away from the display to face her officers. The bridge crew was young, most of them too young to remember the Korvaxi War. They had grown up in a galaxy where humans were respected, where the mere threat of human military action was enough to keep the peace. They didn't understand what that respect had cost. Commander, she said, when someone takes our people, everything becomes internal. The Krall chose to make this personal when they put human civilians in cages. But Admiral, Hayes continued, our intelligence reports suggest the Krall have nearly 800 ships at their main stronghold. They've equipped their fleet with new Vorthon energy shields that are supposed to be impervious to conventional weapons. The tactical situation, Chen interrupted, is irrelevant. Numbers don't matter. Technology doesn't matter. What matters is that they have our people, and we're going to get them back. She walked to the large viewport at the front of the bridge. Outside, space was filled with human warships as far as the eye could see. Each ship represented hundreds of crew members who had volunteered for this mission. Not because they were ordered to, but because it was the right thing to do. Liu, she said without turning around, send a message to all human colonies and civilian installations. Recommend voluntary evacuation of non-essential personnel, 48-hour window. The communications officer looked confused. Ma'am, why would civilian areas need to evacuate? We're only attacking Kral military targets. Chen turned back to face the bridge. Because war is messy, Lieutenant, and because the Kral might decide to retaliate against soft targets when they realize what's happening to their fleet. Admiral, Hayes said, reading from his console, the Kral are sending messages. They want to negotiate. They're offering to release some of the prisoners in exchange for technological data. Some of the prisoners? Chen's voice was dangerously quiet. Yes, ma'am. They want to keep a few as insurance. Every person on the bridge felt the temperature drop. Chen's expression didn't change, but something about her presence became colder, more focused. Send a reply, she said. Tell them we want all of our people back, unharmed, immediately. And if they refuse? They've already refused by not releasing. Everyone immediately. Chen walked back to the tactical display. Hayes, prep the fleet for Protocol 7. The bridge fell silent. Protocol 7 was a designation that appeared in military manuals but was never supposed to be used. It represented total war. No negotiation, no prisoners, no mercy until every human was recovered or avenged. Ma'am, Hayes said carefully. Protocol 7 hasn't been authorized since the Korvaxi incident. Are you sure? I'm sure. Chen's voice carried the authority of someone who had made this decision before. The Kral want to treat this like a business transaction. They want to negotiate, make deals, find compromises. They don't understand that you don't negotiate for human lives. She activated the fleet communication system. Throughout human space, her voice reached every ship, every crew, every person who had answered the call. This is Admiral Chen to all fleet elements. Operation parameters are now active under Protocol 7. Our mission is simple. Recover our people and eliminate the threat to future human shipping. Rules of engagement are unrestricted. Show no mercy to those who show none to our people. Response came back from the fleet, not in words, but in the coordinated movement of 2,000 warships adjusting course for maximum combat efficiency. The human fleet had become a weapon, pointed at the heart of Kral space. Admiral, Liu reported, we're receiving concerned messages from various alien governments. The Altarians, the Vorthans, even some former Korvaxi colonies. They're asking about our intentions. Standard diplomatic response, Chen said. Tell them this is a limited operation to recover stolen property. We have no territorial ambitions and no desire for conflict with anyone except those who threaten human shipping. Property? Hayes asked. Human beings are not property, Chen clarified. But that's how the Kral are treating them, so that's the language they'll understand. The tactical display updated with new intelligence from the target area. The Kral had positioned their fleet in a defensive formation around their main base. 800 ships, including massive dreadnoughts equipped with the latest technology. On paper, it should have been enough to stop any attack. Chen studied the enemy positions. Hayes, what do you see? The tactical officer examined the display carefully. They're using a layered defense. Outer perimeter of fast attack ships, middle layer of heavy cruisers, inner ring of dreadnoughts around the asteroid base. Classic defensive formation? What else? Hayes looked again. They're not moving. They're sitting in fixed positions, waiting for us to attack. Exactly. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. They're thinking like generals, fighting a war. They've studied human tactics from historical battles, probably the Korvaxi incident. They think they know what we're going to do. Don't we always use standard fleet tactics? Against other militaries, yes, but this isn't a military operation. Chen walked to another console and began inputting commands. The Kral made a mistake. They think they're fighting the Earth fleet. They're not. I don't understand. They're not fighting our military, Hayes. They're fighting our entire civilization. Every human ship out there represents not just military power, but industrial capacity, scientific knowledge, and the collective will of 40 billion people who are angry that their neighbors were kidnapped. The display showed new information. as human ships continued to arrive in the staging area. But these weren't just military vessels, converted cargo ships with weapons bolted to their hulls, research vessels equipped with experimental technology, even luxury cruise ships that had been transformed into troop transports. "My God," Hayes whispered. "How many ships are out there?" "As of the last count, 2,300 and rising," Liu reported. "Admiral, this is the largest fleet in human history, larger than anything we assembled even during the Korvaxi War." Chen nodded. The Korvaxi took a research station with 30 people. The Kral took civilian cargo ships with 47 crew members. The response is proportional to the threat. Proportional? Hayes looked at the massive fleet display. 2,300 ships seems like overkill for rescuing 47 people. "It's not about the numbers, Commander. It's about the message." Chen activated another display showing galactic shipping routes. "Look at this. Human commerce flows through every major trade route in the galaxy. Our cargo ships carry medicine to plague worlds, food to hungry colonies, technology to developing civilizations." She highlighted the affected shipping lanes. The Kral didn't just attack 3 ships. They attacked the entire system that keeps galactic civilization running. They threatened every human who travels these routes, every alien who depends on human shipping, every colony that needs our help. So this is about more than just our people? This is about making sure it never happens again. Chen's expression was grim. The galaxy runs on trust. Trust that cargo ships can travel safely, that trade agreements will be honored, that civilians are off limits in political disputes. The Kral broke that trust. A new message appeared on the communications board. The Kral were becoming more desperate in their demands, now asking for entire star systems in exchange for the human prisoners. "They don't understand," Liu said, reading the message. "They keep increasing their demands as if that will make us more likely to negotiate." "They understand exactly one thing," Chen replied. "Power. They think having our people gives them power over us. They're about to learn that the opposite is true." "What do you mean?" "They think taking hostages makes them stronger. But every minute they hold our people, we get angrier. And angry humans are the most dangerous force in the galaxy." The fleet had reached its final staging position just outside Kral space. 2,300 ships holding formation, waiting for orders. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. So much destructive power focused on a single purpose. "Admiral," Hayes said quietly, "the Kral still have time to surrender, to release our people and end this peacefully." Chen looked at the display showing enemy positions. The Kral fleet remained in defensive formation, apparently confident in their ability to repel any attack. "They had 48 hours to do the right thing," she said. "They chose to make more demands instead. They chose to treat human lives like bargaining chips. Now they get to live with the consequences of that choice." "How long will they live with those consequences?" Chen smiled again, that cold expression that made even her own officers uncomfortable. "Not very long." She activated the fleet communication system one final time before the attack began. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. In 60 minutes, we cross into Kral space. Our mission is simple: bring our people home and make sure this never happens again. The galaxy is watching. Show them why humans are left alone." The response from the fleet was immediate. 2,300 ships acknowledged the order and began final preparations for combat. Weapons were charged, shields were raised, and targeting systems locked onto enemy positions. Chen stood at the viewport watching the stars. Somewhere in Kral space, 47 humans were waiting for rescue. They probably didn't know that their entire civilization had mobilized to save them. They probably thought they were forgotten, abandoned, alone. They were wrong. No human was ever alone as long as other humans existed. That was the lesson the galaxy had learned 50 years ago, and the lesson the Kral were about to learn now. The countdown reached 0. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the concentrated fury of an entire species. The war for Kral space had begun, but it wouldn't last long. Supreme Admiral Gorvak of the Kral hegemony stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the World Render, watching his magnificent fleet arrange itself around the asteroid fortress of Kepler's Rest. 800 ships of the line, each one, a masterpiece of Kral engineering and military power. The largest defensive fleet ever assembled in this sector of the galaxy. He was proud of what his species had accomplished. 20 years ago, the Kral had been a minor civilization controlling 3 star systems. Today, they ruled 12 worlds and commanded respect from species that had existed for thousands of years. Their expansion had been swift, decisive, and profitable, and now they were about to claim their greatest prize: victory over the legendary Earth fleet. "My lord," called Captain Vexhai from the tactical station, "the outer sensor grid is reporting massive human fleet movements. They appear to be mobilizing everything." Gorvak's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Excellent. Let them come. Let them bring everything they have. When we crush their entire fleet in one battle, the galaxy will know that the age of human dominance is over." He walked along the observation deck, admiring the defensive formation his commanders had created. 3 rings of ships surrounding the asteroid base, each ring capable of independent action while supporting the others. It was a formation designed by the best military minds in Kral space, using lessons learned from studying human tactics. "How many ships are they bringing?" he asked. "Current estimates suggest over 2,000 vessels, my lord. Perhaps more." "Even better. We'll destroy them all at once." Gorvak turned to address his assembled staff officers. "Gentlemen, today we make history. Today we prove that superior technology and proper tactics can defeat even the most savage enemy." His intelligence chief, a reptilian Saurak named HFY, approached with a data pad. "My lord, I must express concern about these reports of human fleet strength. Our spies suggest they're bringing weapons and ships we've never seen before." Gorvak's expression darkened. "Are you questioning our ability to win this battle?" "Of course not, my lord. I merely suggest caution. The humans have a reputation for unconventional warfare. The humans have a reputation built on one lucky victory 50 years ago," Gorvak snapped. "They surprised the Korvaxi with some primitive trick, but we have studied their methods. We have prepared for their tactics. We have technology they cannot match." He gestured toward the massive ships surrounding them. "Look at our fleet, HFY. Vorthon energy shields that can stop any known weapon. Quantum targeting systems that can hit targets across star systems. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons. What can the humans possibly bring against such power?" The asteroid base of Kepler's Rest was indeed an impressive sight. Originally a mining operation, it had been converted into the most heavily fortified position in Kral space. Weapons platforms covered every surface. Shield generators created overlapping energy barriers. Deep inside the rock, the 3 human cargo ships sat in detention bays like trophies. "Speaking of our prisoners," Gorvak said, "what is their status?" "Alive and unharmed as ordered," reported Security Chief Mordak, "though they continue to refuse cooperation. They won't provide information about human defenses or acknowledge Kral territorial claims. No matter. Once we destroy their fleet, they'll be more cooperative, and if not, they'll serve as examples of what happens to those who oppose the hegemony." New officer approached. Communications Chief Tal Grim. "My lord, we've received another transmission from the humans. They're demanding immediate release of all prisoners." "All prisoners?" Gorvak laughed. "What about our reasonable requests for compensation? Technology transfers? Recognition of our legitimate territorial claims?" They didn't address any of our demands. They simply repeated their demand for prisoner release. Gorvak's good mood began to fade. "Send a reply. Tell them we're willing to negotiate, but only if they acknowledge Kral's sovereignty over this sector. And we'll keep half the prisoners as insurance against future cooperation. Already sent, my lord. Their response was brief. What did they say? Talgrim hesitated. They said no. The bridge fell silent. After a moment, Gorvak began to laugh again. No? That's their entire diplomatic response? Just no? Yes, my lord. These humans are even more primitive than I thought. They don't understand negotiation, compromise, or civilized discourse. They'll learn these things after we crush their fleet. His confidence was shared by every Kral officer in the fleet. They had superior numbers in their own territory, fighting from prepared positions with advanced technology. The humans were attacking across interstellar distances far from their supply lines, using ships that looked outdated compared to Kral designs. My lord, Vexhai called from the tactical station. Our long-range sensors are detecting the human fleet approaching the edge of our space. They should arrive within the next 6 hours. Perfect. Signal all ships to assume combat positions. Activate all defensive systems. Prepare for the greatest victory in Kral history. Throughout the fleet, hundreds of ships moved into final positions. Weapons were charged, shields were raised, and crews prepared for battle. The Kral were confident, well-trained, and ready for anything the humans might try. What they weren't ready for was the complete absence of human communication. My lord, Talgrim reported, the human fleet has entered our sensor range, but they're not responding to our hails. No demands, no threats, no attempts at negotiation. They're probably scared, Gorvak said dismissively. When they see our defensive formation, they'll reconsider their attack. But as the hours passed and the human fleet grew closer, something began to bother the Kral commanders. The human ships weren't behaving like any military force they had studied. There were no scouting missions, no probing attacks, no attempts to gather intelligence about Kral defenses. The humans simply approached in perfect formation, moving with the steady determination of a natural disaster. My lord, HFY said nervously, something about this feels wrong. Military fleets don't operate like this. Where are their reconnaissance missions, their diplomatic efforts, their attempts to find weak points in our defenses? They're obviously using some new strategy, Gorvak replied, though he was beginning to feel uneasy himself. Perhaps they plan to overwhelm us with a direct assault. But that would be suicide. Our positions are too strong, our firepower too concentrated. No rational commander would attempt such an attack. That was the problem, though none of the Kral officers wanted to admit it. The approaching human fleet didn't seem to be operating under normal military logic. They weren't trying to find the best tactical approach or minimize their losses. They were simply coming, like a force of nature that couldn't be reasoned with or deterred. Status report on the human fleet, Gorvak ordered. Vexhai checked his sensors. 2,400 ships in perfect formation. They're moving at standard cruise speed, making no attempt at stealth or deception. Estimated arrival in 2 hours. What about their composition? Ship types, weapon loadouts? That's unusual, my lord. We're seeing everything. Military dreadnoughts, destroyers, frigates, but also converted cargo ships, research vessels, even what appear to be civilian craft with weapons attached. Gorvak frowned. Civilian ships? Why would they bring non-military vessels to a major battle? Unknown, my lord. It's not standard practice for any species we've encountered. The answer, had any Kral been able to understand it, was that this wasn't a military operation in any conventional sense. This was an entire civilization responding to a threat. When humans were endangered, every human capable of helping would respond, regardless of their normal occupation or ship type. But the Kral couldn't understand this concept. They thought in terms of military hierarchies, professional soldiers, and calculated strategies. They couldn't comprehend the idea of 40 billion people personally offended by the imprisonment of 47 strangers. My lord, Talgrim reported, We're receiving frantic messages from our allies, the Vorthons, the Sectai, even the Outer Rim Confederacy. They're all asking about our defensive plans. Tell them we have everything under control. This will be a quick victory that will establish Kral dominance throughout the sector. But Talgrim looked worried. My lord, they're not asking about victory. They're asking about our plans if we lose. Lose? Gorvak's voice rose dangerously. We have 800 ships in prepared positions. The humans are attacking our strongest point with no element of surprise. How could we possibly lose? I don't know, my lord, but our allies seem genuinely terrified. The Vorthan ambassador specifically asked if we had considered surrendering. Surrendering? Gorvak was outraged. We hold all the advantages. We have their people prisoner. We control the battlefield. Why would anyone suggest surrender? HFY approached with another report. My lord, I've been reviewing historical data about human military operations. There are some disturbing patterns. Explain. Every time humans have gone to war, they've displayed capabilities that weren't apparent during peacetime. New weapons, new tactics, new technologies that seem to appear from nowhere. All species develop new weapons during wartime, Gorvak said dismissively. Not like this, my lord. The humans seem to treat war as an opportunity to test experimental technologies, things they would never use except in desperate situations. Such as, during the Korvaxi conflict, they deployed weapons that violated known laws of physics, energy systems that shouldn't have been possible with their technology level, ships that moved faster than their propulsion systems should have allowed. Gorvak was beginning to feel the first stirrings of doubt. Those are probably exaggerated reports from defeated enemies trying to explain their losses. Perhaps, my lord. But we should consider the possibility that we don't know everything about human capabilities. Before Gorvak could respond, every alarm on the ship began sounding at once. The human fleet had arrived. Report! Gorvak shouted over the noise. Human fleet dropping out of hyperspace at maximum weapons range, Vexhai called. My lord, they're not attacking. Gorvak rushed to the tactical display. The human ships had formed a perfect sphere around the Kral position, but they weren't firing. They were just sitting there, waiting. What are they doing? Unknown, my lord. They're maintaining position but not taking any hostile action. Are they trying to negotiate now that they see our strength? No communications, my lord. They're not responding to any signals. For 30 minutes, the two fleets faced each other in silence. The Kral waited for an attack that didn't come. The humans waited for something else entirely. Then Admiral Chen's voice echoed across every communication channel in the system, broadcast in every language known to galactic civilization. You took our people. Return them now, and we will make your deaths quick. The transmission ended. Silence returned to space. Gorvak stared at the display in disbelief. That's it? That's their entire negotiation? Apparently, my lord. Send a response. Tell them we're willing to discuss terms, but only if they acknowledge our legitimate... He was interrupted by Talgrim's panicked voice. My lord, something's happening to their formation. On the tactical display, the sphere of human ships was changing. Slowly, inexorably, it was contracting, moving inward toward the Kral position like a closing fist. Open fire, Gorvak commanded. All ships engage. The enemy! But as the first Kral weapons fired into space, every officer on every Kral ship realized the same terrible truth. The humans hadn't come to fight a battle. They had come to commit extermination, and there was nothing the Kral could do to stop them. The first phase of what would later be called the Kepler Massacre began not with weapons fire, but with physics. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as her fleet contracted around the Kral position. 2,400 ships, moving in perfect coordination, their movements controlled by quantum communication systems that allowed instantaneous command across impossible distances. First wave, initiate kinetic bombardment, she ordered calmly. Throughout the human fleet, cargo ships that had been converted into weapons platforms opened their holds. Inside were projectiles made of dense metal, accelerated by magnetic launchers, to 70% the speed of light. No explosives, no complex guidance systems. Just solid matter moving fast enough to punch through anything. The Kral's Vorthon energy shields, impervious to laser weapons and plasma cannons, were designed to deflect or absorb energy attacks. They were not designed to stop objects with the kinetic energy of small asteroids. The first projectiles struck the outer ring of Kral ships with the force of nuclear weapons. Energy shields flickered and died. Armor plating, rated to survive direct hits from the most powerful conventional weapons, vaporized on contact. Supreme Admiral Gorvak watched in horror as 3 of his heavy cruisers simply ceased to exist, transformed into expanding clouds of superheated gas in the span of seconds. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our shields should have stopped those attacks." "My lord," Captain HFY called from the tactical station, his voice shaking. "Those weren't energy weapons. They were solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Our shields can't stop kinetic impacts at that velocity. Return fire! All ships, return fire!" The Kral fleet opened up with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles, and exotic energy weapons created a light show that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The concentrated firepower of 800 ships should have been enough to destroy any attacking force. The human ships flickered and vanished. "Where did they go?" Gorvak demanded. "Unknown, my lord. They just disappeared." The answer came moments later when human ships began materializing inside the Kral formation. Not approaching from outside, not breaking through the defensive lines, but simply appearing in empty space between Kral vessels. "Micro-jumps," breathed HFY, the intelligence chief. "They're using micro-jumps inside a gravity well. That should be impossible." "Apparently not," HFY replied grimly. The human ships that had appeared inside the Kral formation opened fire at point-blank range, but these weren't conventional weapons either. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to cut through space itself struck Kral ships. Where the beams touched, matter simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not converted to energy, just gone. "What are those weapons?" Gorvak shouted. "I don't know, my lord. They appear to be some kind of spatial manipulation technology. The beams are cutting through our ships at the quantum level." A Kral dreadnought the size of a small city was struck by one of the mysterious beams. The weapon carved through the ship from bow to stern, and the two halves drifted apart as if they had never been connected. The crew never even had time to scream. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Gorvak ordered desperately. "Don't let them get close enough to use those weapons." But the human ships were everywhere now. They flickered in and out of normal space like ghosts, appearing just long enough to fire before vanishing again. The Kral couldn't target them, couldn't predict their movements, couldn't even figure out how they were doing it. Commander Seltar of the Zephyrian Enforcement Division watched the battle from his observation ship at the edge of the system. His normally calm demeanor was gone, replaced by the kind of primal fear that came from watching something that shouldn't exist. "How are they doing this?" Velen asked, his multiple eyes fixed on the tactical display. "I don't know," Zeltar admitted. "Those micro-jumps should be impossible. The gravitational stresses alone should tear their ships apart. And those weapons? I've never seen anything like them. They're not just cutting through matter, they're cutting through space-time itself." On the display, another wave of human ships appeared, this time carrying different weapons. Missiles that seemed to bend reality around them, creating localized distortions in space that crushed Kral ships like paper. Energy weapons that ignored distance, striking targets on the other side of the battlefield instantaneously. "Sir," Velen said quietly, "these technologies, where did they come from? How long have the humans had these capabilities?" "I don't think they did have them," Zeltar replied. "I think they're deploying experimental technology that they've never used before." In the middle of a battle, The humans have a saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. They're not just using their military to fight this war. They're using their entire scientific and industrial infrastructure. The second phase of the battle began when the human ships stopped flickering around the battlefield and began to hunt systematically. They moved through the Kral formation, like predators, targeting specific ship types with terrifying efficiency. Command ships died first, cut apart by the spatial manipulation weapons. Communications vessels were next, isolated and destroyed by kinetic bombardments. Supply ships, medical vessels, even escape pods were hunted down and eliminated with mechanical precision. They're not trying to win, HFY realized with growing horror. They're trying to exterminate us. Gorvak's flagship shuddered as a human destroyer materialized directly above the bridge. But instead of firing immediately, the human ship just hung there as if studying its prey. "Why aren't they attacking?" Vexhai asked. The answer came over the communication system. A human voice, speaking perfect Kral. "Supreme Admiral Gorvak, you have 60 seconds to release our people before we demonstrate what happens to those who hold humans prisoner." Gorvak's mandibles clicked in fury. "How dare they threaten me? Open fire on that ship!" The World Render's main guns swiveled toward the human destroyer and fired. Plasma bolts that could level mountains struck the human ship's shields and simply vanished, absorbed by energy barriers that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "Impossible," Gorvak whispered. The human destroyer's response was swift and final. A single beam of energy struck the World Render's main bridge. Gorvak had just enough time to see the walls around him begin to dissolve at the molecular level before everything went dark. Throughout the Kral fleet, the systematic destruction continued. Human ships had somehow mapped every vessel in the enemy formation and were eliminating them in order of strategic importance. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution. "My lord is dead," reported the acting commander of what remained of the Kral fleet. "Supreme Admiral Gorvak's flagship has been destroyed. What are your orders?" The response came from every surviving Kral ship at once. "Surrender!" But when they tried to signal their surrender, the human ships ignored them. The destruction continued, without pause. Ships that had shut down their weapons and were broadcasting surrender signals died just as quickly as those still fighting. "They're not accepting surrender," someone screamed over the communication channels. "The humans aren't taking prisoners." This wasn't entirely true. The humans were being very selective about which ships they destroyed completely and which they merely disabled. But from the Kral perspective, trapped inside the collapsing pocket of space around Kepler's rest, it looked like genocidal fury. The third phase began when the human fleet reached the asteroid fortress itself. The massive installation, carved from a planetoid and armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets, should have been impregnable. Its shields were powered by the asteroid's core. Its weapons were built into the rock itself. It was designed to be unconquerable. The humans didn't try to conquer it. They tried to move it. Tractor beams, generated by the entire human fleet working in coordination, seized the asteroid and began to pull. Not to destroy it, but to relocate it. To drag a moon-sized fortress out of its orbit and into the path of the system's star. "What are they doing?" asked the fortress commander. "They're pulling us toward the sun," his tactical officer replied in disbelief. "Can they do that?" "They're doing it right now, sir." The fortress weapons opened fire, trying to break the tractor. Beam locks. But the humans had too many ships, too much power. The asteroid began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed as it fell toward the star. "All weapons, target the human ships," the commander ordered. "If we're going to die, we'll take some of them with us." But the human fleet was already gone. As soon as the asteroid's trajectory became irreversible, they vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Kral to contemplate their fate alone. The asteroid fortress of Kepler's rest, along with its garrison of 50,000 Kral soldiers, and its human prisoners, began its final journey towards stellar immolation. But the humans weren't done yet. A single human ship remained behind, not to gloat or threaten, but to retrieve what they had come for. The ship docked with the asteroid's detention center and, with surgical precision, extracted the 3 human cargo vessels and their 47 crew members. Then it too vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Krall to face their doom alone. "The humans," whispered the fortress commander as his home fell toward the star. "They came for their people. Just their people. They didn't want our territory, our resources, our surrender. They just wanted their people back." "And they were willing to destroy an entire fleet to get them?" asked his aide. "No," the commander said, watching the star grow larger in the viewports. "They were willing to destroy an entire civilization." The asteroid struck the star's outer atmosphere 6 hours later. The explosion was visible from 12 light-years away. 50,000 Krall military personnel died in seconds, along with the most powerful fortress ever built in their space. But the message was clear to everyone who witnessed it. When humans said, "Return our people," they meant it. And when someone refused, the consequences were absolute. The battle for Kepler's rest was over. The Krall hegemony, which had controlled 12 star systems for 20 years, had ceased to exist in less than 12 hours. But Admiral Chen's fleet wasn't finished yet. They had come to solve a problem, and problems had a way of spreading if not dealt with completely. The hunt for the remaining Krall installations was about to begin. The rescue operation that followed the destruction of Kepler's rest was swift and methodical. The 3 human cargo vessels, retrieved from the burning asteroid fortress, were quickly transferred to medical ships where their crews received immediate attention. Captain Maria Santos of the cargo ship Peaceful Trader was the first to be debriefed. She sat in the medical bay of a human destroyer, still trying to process what had happened. "Captain," said Commander Hayes, who had been assigned to gather intelligence, "can you tell us about your treatment while in Krall custody?" Santos looked around the clean, familiar interior of the human ship. After 3 days in a Krall detention cell, it felt like a dream. "They kept us locked up, but they didn't hurt us. I think they wanted us healthy for negotiations." "Did they tell you what they planned to demand for your release?" "Technology transfers, territorial concessions, formal recognition of their claims. They seemed to think Earth would give them anything to get us back." Santos paused. "I told them they were wrong. I told them humans don't negotiate with kidnappers." Hayes nodded. "You were right, but I don't think you could have imagined the response they triggered." "Commander, what happened out there? We felt the explosions, but we couldn't see anything from the detention area." Hayes looked through the medical bay's viewport, where the expanding debris field that had once been the Krall fleet was still visible. "Your people came for you, Captain. All of them. But the rescue was only the beginning. As Admiral Chen's fleet spread out through Krall space, they discovered the true extent of the hegemony's crimes. Hidden bases where other species' civilians were held prisoner, slave camps on conquered worlds, evidence of systematic abuse and exploitation that had been hidden from galactic authorities. "Admiral," reported Intelligence Officer Kim from the flagship's briefing room, "we found 17 additional detention facilities throughout Krall territory. They've been holding prisoners from at least 8 different species." Chen studied the reports with growing anger. "How many total prisoners?" "Over 3,000, ma'am. Some have been held for years. The conditions are disturbing." "Free. Them all. Every single one." "Ma'am, that will require a massive humanitarian operation. We'll need to contact the governments of multiple species, arrange transportation, provide medical care, then do it," Chen interrupted. "We came here to solve a problem. The problem is bigger than we thought." Throughout Krall space, human ships descended on detention facilities like avenging angels. Prison camps that had operated in secret for decades were liberated in hours. Prisoners who had given up hope of rescue found themselves free, their captors either dead or fled. But the Kral military wasn't finished. Scattered fleets, based in systems far from Kepler's rest, received word of the disaster and began to regroup. Admiral Kothvar, commanding the Second Kral fleet from the Outer Rim, gathered every ship he could find and prepared for a counterattack. "The humans caught us off guard at Kepler's rest," he told his assembled captains. "They won't have that advantage again. We know their capabilities now. We can prepare countermeasures." His fleet numbered 300 ships, not as large as the force that had been destroyed, but still formidable. And this time, they would be attacking human supply lines rather than defending fixed positions. "Sir," asked his tactical officer, "what about the other species? Our allies?" Kothvar's expression darkened. "What allies? The Vorthons have recalled their fleets to defend their home systems. The Sektai are claiming they were never part of our alliance. Even our tributary states are declaring independence. So we're alone?" "We've always been alone. The other species only respected us when they thought we were strong. Now they've seen what happens when humans get angry and they're running like cowards." But Kothvar's counterattack never had a chance. Human intelligence networks, built over 50 years of galactic commerce, had penetrated every level of Kral society. They knew about his fleet before he finished assembling it. The attack came without warning. Human ships materialized throughout Kothvar's formation, no longer bothering with the psychological warfare they had used at Kepler's rest. This was pure extermination, carried out with mechanical efficiency. Within 6 hours, the Second Kral fleet joined the first in oblivion. Similar scenes played out across Kral space as every military installation, weapons depot, and shipyard was systematically destroyed. The humans hunted down fleeing ships, disabled orbital defenses, and eliminated every trace of Kral military power. But they were careful to avoid civilian targets. Kral colony worlds were left alone, their populations unharmed. The humans had come to eliminate a military threat, not commit genocide. Commander Zeltar watched the systematic dismantling of the Kral hegemony from his observation post. What impressed him most wasn't the destructive power of the human fleet, but the restraint they showed in using it. "They could have destroyed everything," he told Velin as they watched a human fleet bypass a Kral civilian colony. "Their weapons could have cracked planets, sterilized entire worlds, but they're only targeting military assets. Why show mercy to people who took their civilians prisoner? Because that's what separates humans from the species they're fighting," Zeltar replied. "The Kral took prisoners because they enjoyed having power over helpless people. Humans rescue prisoners because they can't stand the thought of innocent people suffering." The final phase of the war lasted 3 weeks. By the end, the Kral hegemony no longer existed as a political entity. Their fleets were destroyed, their military installations demolished, their weapons factories reduced to scrap metal. But the Kral people survived. Human relief ships brought medical supplies to refugee camps. Food shipments fed displaced populations. Engineers helped rebuild civilian infrastructure on worlds damaged by the fighting. "I don't understand," said former Admiral Kothvar, now a prisoner aboard a human ship. "You destroyed our entire civilization. Why are you helping our civilians?" Admiral Chen, who had come to oversee the final surrender negotiations, looked at the defeated Kral officer with something like pity. "Because we're not you. We don't make war on children and families. We don't punish the innocent for the crimes of their leaders. But we were your enemies. We took your people prisoner. We threatened your commerce. Your military was our enemy. Your government was our enemy. Your civilian population was just trying to survive under a regime that made decisions for them." Chen walked to the viewport, looking out at a Kral colony world where human ships were delivering humanitarian supplies. "We came here to eliminate a threat to galactic peace. We've done that. Now we help clean up the mess." Kothvar struggled to understand. "And you expect nothing in return? No tribute? no territorial concessions, no political control. We expect you to remember this lesson. We expect the survivors to build a better government. And we expect that the next time someone suggests taking human prisoners, people will remember what happened to the last group that tried it. The aftermath of the Krall War sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. In the space of 1 month, a major military power had been completely eliminated by a species that most civilizations still considered newcomers to the galactic community. Emergency sessions were called in every major government. Defense budgets were revised, military doctrines were rewritten. But most importantly, diplomatic protocols regarding humans were completely overhauled. The Altarian Parliament passed a resolution formally apologizing for any past misunderstandings with Earth. The Vorthon Empire offered to share their most advanced technologies in exchange for a friendship treaty. Even the proud Saurak Confederacy sent ambassadors to establish formal diplomatic relations. "It's like the entire galaxy suddenly remembered how to be polite," Velen observed as he and Zeltar reviewed the diplomatic communications flooding their office. "Fear is a powerful motivator," Zeltar replied. "The Krall thought they could treat humans like any other species. They learned the difference between being strong and being dangerous. What's the difference? Strong species can defend themselves. Dangerous species can eliminate threats to their existence completely and permanently." Zeltar called up a star map showing former Krall territory. "The humans didn't just win a war, they solved a problem. The Krall will never threaten galactic shipping again because there's no Krall military left to threaten anyone." 3 months after the war ended, a new government formed on the primary Krall world. The Krall Republic, as it called itself, was a democratic federation committed to peaceful coexistence with its neighbors. Its first official act was to sign a non-aggression pact with Earth. Its second act was to erect a monument to the victims of the old hegemony's crimes, with a special section dedicated to the 47 human civilians whose kidnapping had triggered the war. The inscription, written in dozens of languages, read simply, "In memory of those who suffered, and in gratitude to those who came for them." Admiral Chen attended the monument's dedication ceremony, representing Earth at the invitation of the new Krall government. As she stood before the memorial, surrounded by former enemies who were now trying to build a better future, she reflected on the price of the victory. The human fleet had lost only 12 ships in the entire war, with fewer than 300 casualties. The Krall had lost everything: their government, their military, their empire, and nearly 100,000 lives. "Was it worth it?" asked Captain Santos, who had also been invited to the ceremony. "All this destruction, all these deaths, for 47 prisoners?" Chen considered the question carefully. "It wasn't about the numbers, Captain. It was about the principle. If we had negotiated, if we had paid ransom or made concessions, every criminal organization in the galaxy would have learned that taking humans prisoner was profitable. And now they know it's fatal." Chen looked at the monument, where Krall children were placing flowers in memory of people they had never met. "The price was high, but the lesson is permanent. No one will make the mistake the Krall made." As the ceremony concluded and the various species representatives began to leave, Chen received a message from Earth Fleet Command. It was brief and to the point. "Mission accomplished. Return to patrol duties. Well done." She smiled and forwarded the message to her fleet. Within hours, the human ships that had destroyed the Krall hegemony dispersed back to their regular assignments: cargo escorts, exploration missions, and humanitarian operations throughout the galaxy. The galaxy returned to normal, with one important difference. The rule that everyone had known for 50 years was now reinforced with fresh evidence of its consequences. Don't tamper with Earth's fleet. Don't take their people. Don't threaten their commerce. Don't mistake their preference for peace as weakness. The Krall had known the cost of defiance. They had chosen to pay it anyway. Their choice, their consequences, their graves. and in the wreckage of their empire, galactic civilization found peace once again. A peace maintained not by fear, but by the certain knowledge that some lines should never be crossed. The humans had drawn those lines with the debris of anyone foolish enough to test them. The galaxy remembered, and the galaxy learned. And somewhere, in the darkness between stars, human ships continued their eternal patrol, carrying goods and people and hope to every corner of known space. Peaceful traders protected by the most dangerous military force in galactic history. The guardian angels of a civilization that asked only to be left alone and made the cost of disturbing that peace too high for anyone to pay. Earth's fleet sailed on, and the stars were safe.